I so this is going to be a little bit different than we typically do it. But unfortunately, I'm not able to make a meeting before we roll out this process in August. So I thought that I would just take time to walk you through some of the steps for the supervisor and kind of the forms that we're planning on using for their review process. So first of all, you're going to see on my screen here a procedure on the coach certification. And to kind of walk through those steps would be that the CCC supervisor will ensure that the childcare consultant meets the eligibility requirements listed under the initial coach requirements. And those include iConsult level 1, appropriate training series going to coach, whether it be ChildNet 3.0, ECPBS infant toddler, or ECPBS preschool. They would also need to have finished the practice-based coaching training and taking the practice-based coaching and guide action planning training, like the one we're holding in August, and then shadow a minimum of 3 on-site coaching visits with a mentor, which include the 3 components of practice-based coaching. The final piece of that is that they, after those shadowing visits occur, they will have a reflection session with their supervisor. And so you can see here, there's a few bullets under here that have been kind of stepped out of what that could look like. Basically, we were asking the supervisor to utilize a couple of different documents. One, the coach support guidance and the coach reflection tool, which includes the supervisor reflection prompts also to facilitate a conversation about how they're feeling about the different parts of um, practice-based coaching and what they're being expected to kind of know about the content and how they can adequately coach that. Um, so we'll go over those forms here in just a minute, but just to kind of continue on the process, if it is determined that the coach needs additional assistance prior to being signed off for coaching, um, we can we would recommend using an action planning form to kind of guide them through that goal setting, and then sign off on them accordingly. So the supervisor will then email once they're signed off and everything is good. The supervisor will email the regional director, the regional professional development specialist, and the regional behavioral health specialist to confirm they have completed the reflection session and have signed off on the coach. And so the things that we're asking them to include in that email is the name of the consultant, the title of the guide and action plans that align with the training series. So um, ChildNet 3.0 will have 5 or 6 ECPBS preschool, and if it ECPBS infant toddler will also have titles as well. We'll go through that a little bit more in depth in the training in August, so that's not important at the moment. But basically, you just need the titles of what they've completed, so that and the date that they completed it. Because then what's going to happen is um, trains the professional development specialist will then batch enroll that coach into the appropriate series in iPower, the coach certification course. Um, and you'll see there's going to be a coach certification course. Um, in iPower, we're going to start tracking staff training in iPower. So you can kind of utilize that so they can utilize their PD transcript as well in there alongside to parallel the process they do with providers. So which is why we're saying it needs to go to the professional development specialist so they can do that appropriately. And you can kind of see here, um, this is what the series looks like in iPower, but also in iPower, it says 9 clock hours here, but just know that it's set up as a series. So a coach certification is your series name, and then each class is all the different trainings that they will have. So ChildNet 3.0, ECPBS infant toddler, or ECPBS preschool. And when they finish off the ECPBS, any of the 3, they will get 3 training credit hours. Again, paralleling that to what will give providers for coaching credit. Um, so we don't have to go in that process completely, but just so you kind of know what that's about. Um, and then after that's done, they're saying yes, the coach is certified to coach, and then the supervisor will file their documents accordingly, as you would do for your personal organization. And then the certified coach will send their iPower transcript to your regional agency personnel as needed for tracking. So if you're internally tracking that, that's why we're kind of put that step in there so that you guys can kind of make that determination as needed. So um, so in a nutshell, that is the process for coach certification, and really the one that really impacts supervisors the most. Like I said, there's a lot. There's some things in there, obviously, that we'll be building out and talking a little bit more about during the August training. But just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like. So now I'm going to talk through the different forms that I kind of mentioned in that process, and that would be the first one of the supervisor reflection session prompts. Actually, let's no, let's do this one first because it kind of would make more sense if we kind of go in the order in which they should be completed. So this very first document is actually a coach support guidance document. And this is really, while it looks like a rubric, I'm going to be very clear here that this is not intended to measure anybody's skill. It's not intended to judge or make anybody feel like they do not have the skill or the competency to be a coach. The idea behind this document is to really give the supervisors a tool to help them go from emerging to reflective. And so you kind of see um, when you're emerging, it's you know you still have you may have some understanding, but can you really articulate it? And so it kind of goes through emerging, growing, independent, and the reflective. And this is really kind of helping them see that path. And you'll see here that in the criteria, so the first criteria is articulation of the practice-based coaching cycle. Okay, and then it just kind of talks about what that looks like in each one of those categories. The second one is conversation about expected child outcomes. The reason why that is on there is because in the guided action planning process, we do have to identify um, expected child outcomes and guide the provider through that. So that is why that is on there. Um, Understanding and completing goals and implementing goals. Obviously, a part of the practice-based coaching cycle is doing goals and action planning. So you see that 3 and 4 both, and 5 actually are around goal setting. So the understanding and implementing goals is really that SMART goal guidance, right? Understanding that they can understand and articulate how to guide them through creating SMART goals. The content knowledge of number 4 of menu goals. So that's because everything is tailored to a to the specific content. So for example, China 3.0, there will be 5 different topics that they will be kind of guiding them through. We make sure that they have the in-depth knowledge to be able to do that. And so that's what that is. Really talking about, do you understand environments? Do you understand mealtime practices? And so those are just a couple of examples. And then on 5, understanding goal maintenance is really, what does it mean to put a goal in maintenance? A goal is never actually completed. A goal is actually just put in maintenance because there's times when you may go back to that goal and then make adjustments and make new action steps in order to maintain that goal. And so really, what does that mean? What does that look like? Um, and so really want them to be able to really understand how to do that. So what that is why that is there. Number 6, you'll see effectively uses varied coaching strategies. So we know we have varied between iConsult strategies and practice-based coaching strategies. There's a lot out there that they can use. Um, your regional behavioral health specialist can help them with that as needed. But just so you kind of know, that's why that's there. So that they're really using those responsive strategies to motivate and empower their providers to implement the change with the skill and knowledge from the training. Number 7 is the guidance and management of coaching strategies. So basically here is taking those resources and making sure that they're research based, and then they're kind of talking them through how to use those resources, not just going out and handing them a stack of books and saying, hey, here's some resources for you to use, but really in modeling that behavior, but really giving them, some taking time to kind of walk through it, pulling out some key information and modeling those best practices. So that's why that's kind of in there. Number 8 is on building and trusting respectful relationships with the coachee, which would be your provider. Um, again, building relationships, that's not part of that collaborative partnership, right? And so we want to make sure that's in there and that they're really maximizing how to do that. And then number 9 is consistent and thorough with follow through. So is reliable, meets with their provider regularly, is helpful, those kind of things. And so this is not an all-encompassing list, obviously, of what characteristics of a coach. But when we're talking coaching for credit and kind of how we've built out the system, these are really the 9 criteria that we feel are kind of captured the best. Um, so that being said, with this being a kind of, a lack of a better term, a rubric, we're really calling it more of a coach support guide, really, because we don't want it to feel like it's being scored. We don't want it to feel like it's a pass or fail because it definitely is not. It's really just meant to be a roadmap and kind of guidance for supervisors to utilize and your consultants too, because we want to give this to them before they do the next piece, which is take this reflection tool. So this reflection tool is um, really kind of I guess, set up kind of like a self-assessment, but they're going to again, rate themselves whether they feel they're in the emerging, growing, independent, or reflective stage. And if you'll notice that each of the criteria match up with each of the criteria up here, so they can go here and say, okay, articulation of the practice-based coaching cycle. I clearly explain all stages of the practice-based coaching cycle with examples and practical application. Then they can go back up here and go, okay, I'm going to look and see what that looks like at each one of these levels. So do I feel like I am emerging, growing, independent, or reflective? And that's really going to help guide them through how to kind of rate themselves. Again, we're not wanting to set them up and say they're doing anything wrong. These are opportunities um, to build content knowledge. And just really helps, is more of a tool, measurement tool, so that you as a supervisors can really have good conversation with the consultants on that. Um, and you'll see all the way through. It's 9 questions, um, one for each one of the things up at the top, criteria up at the top. Um, but really just want them to be as honest as they possibly can, because that's really where it's going to be, you get the most richest conversation that you have with a supervisor. And just note that while they may rate themselves, maybe they rate themselves on um, conversations about expected outcomes. Maybe they think that they are at an independent stage, right? That they provide a solid explanation of how to discuss expected child outcomes with some practical examples. And maybe when you're observing them and talking them through that, maybe you're seeing them more at the growing stage. So what does that look like? Those conversations look like? That's kind of being tailored individually on how do we provide constructive feedback to move them to where they think they are with the independent stage. Just know that there's going to be probably a little discrepancy between what where they find themselves and where you might put them, just based on your observation. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually places for growth and places for opportunity. And that's really how we want to present this, is more of allowing them to grow in their skill and knowledge, and not we're not saying they're not capable of being a coach at all. That's not what we're saying with this at all. So I just want to make that very clear here, that this is really just intended to be a tool and to really help guide those conversations. So, um, and how it's presented is that's how I'm hoping the message gets presented to them. And we will talk through this a little bit too during the August training. But we do not want any intimidation with this. This is not, again, that's not what this is intended for. And we can talk more through it as a larger group. But if you notice at the bottom here, we also have some next steps, which are to reflect on areas of target for growth and discuss strategies with your supervisors. So again, kept it very open. There's no signature, there's nothing like that. It's just, we're going to have a conversation. We just want to see where you are and see kind of where you fall, where you feel like you fall. However, if there's a time, so within the eligibility, um, there was so one thing that's really going to help guide guide these conversations after they've done this is called a find it here, the supervisor reflection session prompts. Okay, and so you will also see here that these are also based these criteria are based on the same ones that we just talked through on the guidance document prior. But this is for the supervisor to really here's some questions that maybe you can ask. These are optional. This is against a guidance tool. It's not a checklist. It's not intended that you ask every single question. This is really here for the supervisors to say, okay, what kind of questions, what can I do to start the conversation, right? Because that can be kind of hard at first, especially if we're kind of into something new. And so maybe the prompting question about practice-based coaching is, what do you know about the practice-based coaching cycle? And if you need a little more help with that, then have you seen it in practice? Can you walk me through an example? What do you think made it successful? So on and so forth. We're talking about practices and outcomes. How about we discuss how you would guide educators in linking child outcomes to instructional practices when determining the goal, right? So kind of talking through that. What questions would you ask? Have you seen a time when the expected child outcomes have been tied back to developing appropriate practices? Um, are you familiar with resources that could help our provider navigate this? All of the questions, right? And again, these aren't comprehensive. All of these are just guided questions. You can take the conversation however you need to take it, and you don't need to use these. But this is here for more of a guidance to kind of because sometimes it can kind of be tough, kind of um, to come up with the language sometimes. But keep in mind too that we do want you to at least have a conversation on each one of these criteria as you feel like is appropriate from um, the uh, the uh, the the document before the course guidance and the self-assessment. So if you're finding that there may be some discrepancies there, and maybe you don't need to speak about practice coaching because you feel like they do a really good job with that. Um, but maybe you want to hear a little bit more how they feel about practices and outcomes. That's okay. You don't have to do every single one. Um, you can pick and choose where you feel like the coach has strengths, has weaknesses, opportunities, and kind of get their feel a little bit more of what they're thinking. So again, not a required document, but something just for guidance. Same thing with the goal setting, action planning. Same, here's a question, here's some prompting, some prompts to kind of talk through that. Um, Real similar to what we, again, trying to parallel it to kind of what we do with our net certification process and other um, consultation strategies that we've used in the past. So just really this shouldn't feel unfamiliar to them because we're kind of using that same kind of format. Um, but you'll see we also have for coaching strategies, coaching partnerships, and you will notice that there's not as many because like with the goal setting, three of those criteria kind of bunched together in goal setting. So we kind of combine those. Um, some of the coaching strategies and building relationships, same thing. Like we kind of bunch those together. So there's not as many criteria um, prompts, but they're all included appropriately or accordingly um, as it aligns with the other document there. Um, so at the end of that, so you're going to kind of use this reflection session. It's kind of the end of the coach eligibility um, requirements. Like I said before, they had to go out and take these trainings, and then they have to go shadow the mentor through the practice-based coaching cycle on whether it be with ChildNet, ECPBS and with toddler or ECPBS preschool. And keep in mind that this process needs to be done with every training. So they have to be signed off on ChildNet. And then when they're signed off on ChildNet and they can do those, then they're going to have to go through the same process again for ECPBS infant toddler, get signed off on those, and then do it again for ECPBS infant preschool. So they will have to go through this 3 times. And then after that, anytime a new curriculum comes out with guide action plans attached to it, like possibly PITC or PBIS family childcare, they will have to go through this process again. And the reason for that is We want to make sure they understand the alignment with the guide action plans to the content of the training. And so you can't just be signed off once as a coach to train all the curriculums. You have to sign off for each one. So hope that kind of makes sense as to how that works. Again, you probably will have more questions by the time I'm kind of done talking through this because you're not seeing the whole process in its entirety. But just know that we will take those questions, and that's why I'm asking for your feedback on this too. Is jot your questions down. Let's get them out there, and then we can kind of talk through it. Um, but so at the end, you're going to kind of see here. This is the document that they're used that that you're going to use to send to you're not going to actually send this document to training specialist, but you're just going to let them know, hey, they have completed the activities needed for to be eligible for to be a coach, right? For individual topics. So you'll see it's listed here: iConsult level 1, the appropriate training series going to coach, practice-based coaching training, the practice-based coaching and guided action plan training, a minimum of the 3 on-site coaching visits, and then the reflection session with the supervisor. And this last one here is if you need any additional support or goals and action steps that are needed. Um, if you feel like we can't just sign off with the ones above. So if they need to be put on an action plan, not because they've done anything wrong, but maybe you feel like they need a little bit more help on a certain topic before they would be able to coach. Um, that's what that last one is. So you will see here, it says, upon review, I've determined that additional action steps are needed to meet eligibility requirements before they can provide coaching for professional development credit. And then you'll also see here that upon review, they have met all those requirements. So you're going to pick one or the other, and then you're going to sign it, and the coach is going to sign it. And just keep in mind, the reason why we kind of put these together like this is, you know, before we've had, consultation around training or kind of the coaching pilots that we've done with ChildNet 3.0. But the thing of it is now we're offering coaching for credit. And we want to make sure that coaches are um, feel confident in being able to coach that adequately, right? Because when we're asking to for credit for that, we're kind of raising the standard just a little bit. Just like we want to they receive training credit, we want to make sure that they're, certain expectations in place for providers to receive training credit, but we also have expectations for our trainers to make sure that they're facilitating those trainings effectively. It's no different with the coaches. We just need to make sure there's standards in place to make sure that we can sign off on them and say, hey, yes, you've met all the requirements needed to be a coach and you're good to go. So that's really the why behind this process. But I just wanted to thank you for taking some time to watch this and talk this through. I know you're probably gonna have more questions and answers at this point, and that's totally okay. I'll be more than happy to meet with you guys at a later time. I just knew before uh, I wasn't able to make your 23rd meeting, and we have that training coming up in a couple weeks. So at least wanted an opportunity to get this out to you, let you see it before we do present it to the supervisors, and so they can start utilizing this process. So again, thank you so much for your time. If you want to give some feedback, that would be fantastic. Um, if you could have that back to me by August 1st, I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much.